All right, so today in the GradeCam 101 session, we are going to cover using data with students and empowering your students through that data that you share and you collect in GradeCam. So joining us today on the call is I am Kate Pyland, and I am a customer success coach with GradeCam. So I help teachers and other users get familiar with GradeCam and how different ways of being effective and efficient with what they're doing. Busy is also on the call manning the chat today. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those right into the chat. Katie is a director of customer experience. She's not on with us today, but she's another face that you may see in any of your email communications that come around. So we're always happy to help out and answer any questions. So this first slide I just want to quickly point out is just some different resources on navigating GradeCam if you're kind of new to it or not super familiar, some highlights of some current features and functionalities that may be of interest to you. And so we've linked those here, as well as provided you with a short link in the chat if you would like to research those just a little bit further. So in today's session, we are going to be empowering your students with data. So this is kind of one of my favorite things to talk about with GradeCam, is particularly because of how easy that data is to pull out and really making it easy to share right with students so that they have the opportunity to make decisions based on what they're seeing and kind of give you their reflections and interpretations about their data. So really a powerful piece to be able to bring students right into their learning. So first off is we're just basically going to go in and highlight some of those reports and different configurations that you can do with your data that you already have within GradeCam and how you can share this out with students. So I've put some reminders in here as well as some links into some report basics, talking a blog post we have about using those assessments. It's one of our teachers that have used it in the past. Really great for having those data conversations within your classroom. So let me jump right over into GradeCam and go into the item analysis report. So you can click on view reports, or you can view by assignment and then select the assignment, however you wish to navigate from the assignments from there. And we do a quick refresh on my screen. Something is getting bogged down. All right, so now I'm right back in there. From the main page, I click on View Reports, and then I am going to go into this ELA 6 quiz that's going to take me into the data. If you navigated to the assignment list first and then select on it, you would come into the Responses tab, and then you just click over to the Reports. Just depends on how you want to get there. So the very first assignment or report, that we're going to look at is the item analysis. And this is a great breakdown overall to look and see how students responded to each specific question on an assignment. So if you're bringing this up with your students in the classroom, this is really a good time to talk about misunderstandings or why they would have selected a particular answer or the justification behind why something was correct. But if you're going to show this in the classroom, as you'll notice that as I'm hovering over the lines, is it gives what specific students answered that response, which is great for a teacher standpoint. This may not be something that you want the students to see because you want to keep it pretty generic. So if you go up to the configure button, and then toggle to turn or hide the names and scores. This is nice because now when I hover over, it just says the number of students that I'm looking at, but it's not looking at specific students. This just kind of keeps that a little bit more in anonymity so that students don't feel pointed out, or if they answered, they're the only student that answered wrong, they can know that, but you don't have to have anybody else know that. So this is really powerful so that if I would pull up question number 5, you can see that there's quite a few that had a misunderstanding. And this is a good time to sit down and pull up the question and see what was number 5. How was this listed? What was confusing about it? In number 6, where there's a split decision, maybe have kids defend why they chose what they did. If they know they wanted to select number or letter C, what was that response and why did they do that? So configuring just kind of hides those student names, making it a little easier for you to share those reports with students. So I did highlight that in our slides or resources so that you kind of keep that in mind if you're sharing it with students. The next one is the student exam report, and this may be something that may go out specifically to students in some sort of a reflection activity that you're going to do because it's made for individual students. So if I navigate to the students tab, and then go down to exam report. This is going to give a summarization for that student of how they did on the assignment. So as you can see here, I do still have the names listed. If you would like to hide student names, you can do that. But I've also had teachers say that they go ahead and leave the student names. They like to print these on separate pages because then they're going to take this exam report and hand it back to the student and say, okay, I want you to go back and review those questions that you missed and provide me the correct answer and give me evidence for how you determined that was the correct answer. So you can hand that back to them. So it's something additional that they can do as a part of the reflective activity to understand where they got the misunderstanding, or if they just need to do some additional studying to find that information. You can also choose to just show correct answers if you want them to have that correct answers, opposed to them having to go out and find that. So maybe if it was confusing, so it just places that correct in there. Sometimes this right now is only showing missed questions. If I toggle that off, this shows all the questions, but then marks the ones that they got incorrect. Again, it just comes down to finding what works best for your situation and your classroom practices for building in that reflective piece. Now, once I would hit print, it would then print these all on separate pages. What I also like is this can include your performance band as well. So if you have a specific performance band, that can also be included, so that if you want them to group up by their band level, they could do that. It would be right there in there for them, so that they could kind of small group together and maybe discuss the questions that they may have missed, and if they find commonalities there. The next one that we're going to look at is the class by question or by standard. It all just depends on how you have your assignment set up. So again, we're going to navigate down to classes. This is something I could put in front of my students to show them the results. If I go class by question, this would help us kind of determine, overall as a class, we found number 5 to be very confusing. And so that would be a question that we could go back as every class and discuss, what was better ways of presenting that? What were some skills that maybe led up to it? Again, was the question confusing? If it's 1 or 2 questions that one class may have missed that, I would talk with that class in specifics to see how they could, address where it was confusing specifically for them. That's another way you could do that. If you have standards tied to your assignment, you can look at the same data, but just looking at by standards, because sometimes one question might have, or a couple questions might be tied to the same standard. So you can say overall, as all the classes, there may be a particular activity we need to work on to address one standard, whereas this class is the only class that I'm going to have them come back and we're going to talk about their standard in their class and how we can address that. So you can have that information there. If you go by question, you can still display the standards, so you can see those separately. Just come up here to configure and then show standards in header. This just makes it a little easier to see those standards right across the top, but it just doesn't lump them together. You're still seeing those questions all separated out. So it's particularly powerful that when you're going through these different reports, whether you're talking with your students or you're just talking or looking at the data in general, is don't forget to check out this configure button, because this is a different setting per report, just depending on how you want that information displayed. So really helpful pieces there. So the next thing I really did want to touch on, kind of some pro tips, is we do have some of the online functionality that allows for that feedback to come more immediate. Since it is online, the students can get that feedback right away on what they got right or wrong or how they're doing in their progress. So there's some additional pieces here that if you're using the online student portal to do testing, you can also have some additional data feedback there. So I'm going to jump back over to GradeCam and talk about the online access, in particular, those review settings. Let me choose a different assignment for this one. I'm going to go to my Lemonade work quiz. So if you go into student portal, so as you're assigning this for the class, and you can always adjust this later. So if you had done it and you're like, hey, I really want them to see a little bit more information now, know that you can update this. I'm going to go into my reading in class that already had this assigned, and under the review section, or if you go under show settings and then review, this is the data that is shown after a student completes an assignment. So what do you want students to see? If you say just review the responses, all they will see is kind of a summary overview of what they had submitted for the assignment, and they won't see what they got right or what they got wrong. So I'm going to add one more toggle here, and I want them to see the questions that they got wrong, because maybe as a part of my classroom practice is to build in that reflective activity. Is as soon as you get your results, I want you to mark down the ones that were incorrect and go find the correct answer. that is a part of the reflective activity in order to get additional credit or to make sure they can kind of get the opportunity to retake the exam, whatever they're going to do. But I'm going to make it so that they can see what they got wrong right away. So as soon as they turn in, that's what they're going to see. If I hit save, I'm going to jump over to my online portal so I can see an assignment that I had started as a student. So I'm signed in as a student. I already kind of preloaded this test with some answers, and then I'm going to hit turn in. So immediately upon that, by doing online, I'm able to see which ones I got wrong. It is not showing me what the correct answer is. It's just saying what the wrong, which ones were wrong. If I go over to GradeCam and I make a quick change, I'll have to do a refresh on my screen, but now I'm going to show them the correct answer. And go back to my portal, refresh the screen. How does this look slightly different? Now I said, I want you to show what the correct answer should have been for those incorrect ones. So you can see that it lists down below it what the correct answer is. So those review settings that you have online and that you set is what determines what you can be able to see with your students and be able to talk with that information afterwards. Students do get some additional data on anything they've turned in. So if they're in student portal, they can see their assignments and their scores over time. There's some information there as well. So just kind of knowing you have some additional feedback. You can also give more detailed feedback about a response right here by using the bubbles. This also goes online. So if you want to give some further explanation, that they will then see that with the responses as well. They can dig into that. That's another way of helping students along in their learning. So we provided you some links and resources if you're wanting to dig a little bit deeper into some of the data and the information that you can review with online for students. All of that information is here, as well as some quick start guides if you have not gotten started with the student portal yet, so you know what you can get started with and how you can use that. And last but not least, some extra credit tips and tricks to help you as you're using data with your students, such as showing those missed questions, reviewing the reports anonymously, showing student growth measures. This is all some data tips that you can take into account or use these or share them with others. The data conversations video is a wonderful video also as well. It just kind of goes over how you can build those conversations and what would those conversations maybe look like and what reports to reference as you're having those data conversation by reflective yourself, working with other teachers or with students specifically. So a lot of great information there. So we're really glad that you were able to join us today for using data with your students and to empower your learners. But if you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out to support@gradecam.com and we'll happily help you as best we can. So thank you so much for your time. You guys have a great day.